we fly by the seat of our pants here. That's okay? Correct.
Welcome again. Welcome again to Independent Living in Niagara County's annual Meet the Candidates Night. Little housekeeping. We're going to have each candidate talk a little bit about themselves, their background, why our vote is important, and then answer questions from both the Zoom room and here live at our building. Our first candidate is David Meridian, who's a candidate for Assembly, New York State District 145. David.
Thank you. I'm going to look at you folks so I can, the folks at Zoom, hopefully it's good as well. I am Doug Meridian. I'm running for the New York State Assembly in the 145th District. This is the first time we've actually had a race in 6 years. Since 2016, there hasn't even been an opponent. So I am challenging for this seat this year. I am born and raised in Niagara Falls. My mom taught at Gaskill. I went to high school on the corner, what I like to call the Niagara Falls High School, the original. And I actually have worked in healthcare for almost 20 years, or just about 20 years, on the medical equipment and supply side, also in pharmaceutical and software. What's interesting to me, and I'm looking forward to your questions, is that even with my experience, and why I think it gives me some frame of reference to talk about certain issues, and we'll get into that, it's not specific. My career was not specific in serving folks with disabilities, and that is unique. So I look forward to your questions, and I don't pretend that just because I've worked in healthcare for that amount of time that I know, because I don't. Your needs and your priorities, I've learned a bit over the last week or so. So I look forward to your questions, but that's a bit about me. I'm a father. I have 2 young boys. We live in Wheatfield now. Lovely wife who puts up with me not being home the last few months. So, but that's it. That's it for me, and I look forward to your questions.
Questions from the room?
Yep, I'm sorry.
My name is Jeanette.
Hi, Jeanette.
What is your plan to improve housing for people with low income? Apartments are extremely expensive. $1,000 to $1,500 a month. And a lot of single parents don't have that kind of income. So what is your plan to improve affordable housing?
Well, thank you. The question has come up not just for folks who, it's come up for folks who are subsidized, unsubsidized. It doesn't matter how you're renting or where you're renting from. It seems like we have seen over the last year or so a huge increase in the cost of rent. So the answer to your question, I don't know that I have a specific solution, but I do pride myself on being someone who listens, tries to get perspective from both sides, and I pride myself in being a doer, somebody who finds solutions, finds a path forward. If there's a will, there's a way is always kind of my motto. So we also have a unique situation in Niagara County where we have an abundance of property, but not all of it's livable. So how do we, so that maybe we can, I guess what I'm looking at is I always like to see if we can find a solution that serves 2 purposes. So we can make housing more affordable, make housing more available, and at the same time, maybe fix up some of the dilapidated housing that we have that just sits there. So maybe there's a creative solution to both problems. I don't know in the short term what the immediate solution would be to curb rents. One thing would be to raise the amount of assistance that folks receive, because I've in my conversations and my research have learned that it's far less than what is necessary at this time. So, yes.
Hi, I'm actually Chair Town Board. I was in town
Thank
also. But I'm wondering what your plans are. What is your platform? What ideas do you have for our
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and the city is part of the district. I try to make sure that folks understand that while I'm born and raised here and Niagara Falls is close to my heart and will continue to be, my district expands from Grand Island all the way up to Youngstown. Okay, so it's all along the river. I've even got a piece of North Tonawanda, town of Wheatfield, town of Niagara, town of Lewiston, and village of Lewiston. So I think it's one of the most unique and beautiful districts in the state. It's also one of the most underserved, and it has been for decades. My entire life, we have seen our power, our parks, our casino. None of that money ever seems to stay here. I don't understand it. I don't know why it is. And I don't know why we're not putting up more of a fight about it. All right. So I don't want to go over time, but I mean, I used to go back to school. I actually helped paint this weekend. But I used to go back to school shopping on Main Street. I used to go for a milkshake at the Royal Chef. I mean, this was a bustling corridor. By the time I graduated high school, it was all boarded up. The decline has been so rapid. But yet we still have a park that sees more visitors than the other top 10 state parks combined. We have a casino that somehow can fund a new stadium for the Bills, but can't fix our roads. We have a power authority that gives $90 million to Buffalo for waterfront development, but yet it's in our backyard. So we have to have that conversation. That's my fight, right? Day one. Day one is the inequity that has been going on here for decades. Why do we not have a seat at the table? Why do we not get our fair share? And how do we shift that dynamic? That's day one. I think my other priorities, which is making this a community that's safe for families, making it a place that people enjoy spending time, places where people feel safe, all of that. I hate to say it, money doesn't fix all the problems, but a lot of that stems from the fact that we get the support that we need. You know, we can expand programs if we have the funding. We can put maybe more resource officers, not necessarily police officers, to interact with the community if we have the funding. We can do a lot of those things if the funding, if the programs are there. But if it's not, if we don't fight that first battle, I can't do the things I want to do for families and for kids. I've been involved with the Boys and Girls Club. I've been heavily involved with the hospital. We can, on a healthcare front, on an assistance front, all the things that we want to help with. It's very hard to do that if we don't have the funds in place to begin with. So that's going to be a fight I have to have on both sides of the aisle. I got to convince people that, and I see, and I'm sorry, I want to get to other questions. But when you go and it's when you see the statistics, I think we all know it, we all live it. But when you see it broken down as a statistic, food insecurity, transportation, housing, we're lower than the national and state levels in almost every category. I mean, it's almost unheard of to think that we have the resources that we have, power, parks, casino, and yet we can't even make sure that people have access to decent food or transportation. That to me, I just don't see, I don't see how we aren't fighting that fight. We got to fight that fight.
That is something near and dear to many of the people that we serve. And you spoke to Jeff very familiar with our population, student population. Are you willing to learn and ready to dive in to help us achieve what we need to achieve?
I'd say it's probably the thing I'm most eager about. I really like the idea of getting into office and hearing from folks and learning from folks. And I would have to then you research, why is it this way? Okay, that's the other thing too. You can't just say, oh, well, is this right or is this wrong? Okay, why is it this way? Is there something, is it even, how can we change it? Is it easily changed? What's the process in changing it? So it's nice for people to come in and I'm not just saying I'm saying in general, politicians come in and make promises. My promise is I'll listen, I'll learn, I'll take it forward. I'll try to find the answers. I will make sure that I call you and say, I don't have an answer yet, but I'm still working on it. Those kinds of things. So I look forward to that. I look forward to the learning curve, so to speak. But the other thing is too, I think there's a learning curve for other legislators. Me coming from healthcare, one of the things that I saw, and I have come to find out, when I started in healthcare 20 years ago, there were people in long-term care facilities. I'll use that as an example. I know it's not the same situation as working with folks with disabilities, but there were folks in long-term care facilities that now, present day, or even a few years ago, those folks are now being cared for at home months, year at a time. They're not going into a facility. They're still able to live somewhat, but they're able to be cared for at home. Not you folks, you're looking to help people live independently. Okay, so I'm an advocate already for the idea that facilities aren't always the best option. I think it should be the last option. You know, having somebody at home, independent, productive is by far, to me, and I've seen that firsthand. So that I can relate to, and I have that frame of reference, I have that empathy, I guess, so that I can start there. Like my starting point is a little higher, I think. While I'd have to learn specifics about the challenges your community deals with, I think my starting point's a little higher. And I know a few of the acronyms too. There's so many darn acronyms in healthcare, right? I mean, everybody DSP, I'm learning about DSPs. And so it's, so it's this, that's part of it too, speaking the language, the language of our industry, so to speak. There's a learning curve there too, which I think I would kind of pick up on pretty quick. So, yeah.
We've got time for one more question.
Yes,
This is a two-parter, sorry about that. for the
that's okay.
comment.
I'll try, and I try not to be too long-winded.
All right, in the past, right, we've had people come and speak before us during election time. And I know you said you make certain promises that you keep. And one that somebody promised, I think he was going for state senator back in the day, he was talking about transportation from right here to about 40 different places. Or just people in general. Right, what the promise was, we got a surplus now of 10 days, which we no longer have, right? And we can put it into that system. What I'm saying is you do some research on that to see if things can be better. If I'm not mistaken, it's still an issue, right, Mark?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It shouldn't take all that time to go from here to July.
True, yeah.
And the second part is that I'll say jobs in the area. Everybody talks about jobs in the area. But when I asked the former mayor we had about hiring people with disabilities, you know what I'm saying? Oh, yes, we will. Never heard from him yet. Same thing that they said. The thing about it is, once you come visit us right now, right? Not saying you can do everything, but at least come by every now and again and say hi. or
Oh, my
something.
goodness, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just don't come one and done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I don't think that makes you look good. But what did make you look good, you're one of 3 people that's here today.
Oh,
And I
absolutely.
think that's a plus.
Oh, right. Listen,
I know many things were set out. So just, what can you do about transportation? What can you promise about job people?
thank you. Showing up is important to me, always has been. I actually worked on a very small level, used to help, folks who were in part of the independent living, because we had a medical equipment store right there in Wheatfield. So I'm familiar. Like I said, went to high school here, me coming down here, me going somewhere. That's my first choice, is showing up in person. So thank you. As far as transportation goes, I think one of the things I really like to do, I'm not a career politician. This is my first entry into politics, but I bring that perspective. I like that I've worked, the fact that I've worked in healthcare, but also from a business perspective, when you talk about transportation, there's so many pieces to that, but they all should benefit. Okay. So how do we make it easier for folks to have access to transportation? How do we make it easier for folks with disability to have access to transportation? How do we make it easier for workers to have, right? So they all fall under that umbrella, and we have to think of everybody, but everybody benefits. So it's not just like we need to fix this problem with transportation for folks with disabilities. We need to fix this problem with transportation because they're talking about creating 1,000 jobs at Amazon, and there's no bus route. So there's no, I don't know whether these 1,000 people, if you're working for $15, $16 an hour at Amazon, you might not, and what the statistics tell us is that most people in Niagara Falls, an astounding number of people in Niagara Falls, don't have a car. So they use they rely on public transportation. So it's, what I look at it is, I look at that as a meaningful challenge because I can help so many different people. I can help that worker who's trying to get to Amazon. I can help those folks with disabilities. I can, right? How do we do this so that it benefits? That to me, I look at that as a situation where a lot of people benefit. So let's go after that, right? How we do it, I'll get back to you. But I look at that as a situation when anybody mentions transportation to me, I say, look at all the people who would benefit if we can get this done. We can get this done, it would just be a huge benefit to so many people. So that would be, yeah, I mean, you can't have a conversation about economic development and creating jobs with an Amazon project and not have a conversation about transportation. You can't have a conversation about being more friendly to folks with disabilities and offer, making sure more of them have opportunities at work without transportation. So a lot of people fall under that umbrella. So. Yeah, no, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Just real quickly, the transportation. We need to have the transportation 7 days a week. We can have some, but weekends, it's not fair. I live in North Tonawanda. There's a lot of different stores at the plaza, grocery shopping, blood work. I can't go on the weekend because there's no transportation. So we need weekend services as well.
And my answer to that would be, that's part of listening. Part of listening is, okay, it's not just enough to say, we need transportation. Those specifics that you mentioned, it needs to be these days, these times, to these locations. That's how you start to really chip away at make progress. The other thing I would say is, and I know we're short on time, is what transportation looks like, what work looks like. Think about how much that's changed in the last 6 years since we had an election, since we had a race. So like I said, we haven't even had 2 people on the ballot since 2016. Our world has changed so much since that time. And transportation looks a lot different now than it did. Ride sharing and such, and even work looks a whole lot different. Work from home and things of that nature. So maybe it's the other part of it is to rethink transportation, rethink work and what it looks like. And that's just part of being a good listener and being open-minded. And I believe that I know that I will do that. That's my promise. So thank you.
Thank you.
Where's my mask? Hold on. Here it is. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
She'll stand to your right hand side. Let me introduce you first. Where am I supposed to stand? Yes. Right here. Our next candidate is Margaret Toper, who's a candidate for Pendleton Town Council. She's going to talk a little bit about herself and the town and why our vote is important, and then we'll ask questions. Go ahead.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here and welcoming me to come and meet with you. I should put this down. Okay. I'm gonna hit
Just a
you.
little bit over here. She needs me on here. There you go. You're
Like
fine.
that?
Yep, that's good.
I'm there to just get my side view. So how do I get
Oh, you're looking at the camera.
like that? All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Margaret Toper. Nice to meet you. So what would you like to know?
A little bit about yourself, man.
Myself? Okay. Retired. I have 30 years experience in higher education. I worked at Niagara County Community College for 25 years as the Director of Community Education, worked at Damon College for 4 years as the Assistant to the Vice President for Academic Affairs and also Director of Extended Studies. And then also, while I was in graduate school in New York City at Teachers College, Columbia University, I worked in the admissions office. What else? Let's see, that's 30 years of my life. When I first got out of grad school in 1976, my first job was at Transitional Services. So I worked with that population of people coming out of Buffalo Psychiatric Center, the emergency hostel service. And our job was to work with the clients to get them situated financially, emotionally, and ready to go into independent living in the community. So I worked with them. Also, I don't remember, now when that was, but I also worked for Cerebral Palsy Association as a social rec coordinator. And let's see, the emergency hostel service, worked with group homes, as well as the buildings that Transitional owned at the time. So I've worked with populations that, had special needs and worked in the community to help them find suitable housing, get them on, public assistance, whatever they needed, and a day program of some sorts. And then in my higher ed administration experience, I developed programs, hired instructors, evaluated programs, wrote reports, did contracts, partnerships with community agencies, government agencies, other colleges, school districts, workforce development, anything from college for kids to driver ed for teenagers to computer training programs, the licensed practical nurse program, emergency medical services, computer classes, recreational programs, senior citizen programs. I've always had diversity in my background, yes.
You seem to have a lot of experience in dealing with people who might struggle with living independently. What is it that you think you can do for that population in your role in government?
In government, okay. I'm new to politics. I was asked by the Democratic Committee of Pendleton to run for town council. Okay, so I figured with my work experience, I'm not afraid to just go out there and contact whoever I need to contact to set up a program based on needs of the people. So in my role with town council, I would want to meet with different focus groups to find out what do the people of Pendleton want, and then focus in that area. As far as people with special needs, town of Pendleton has an amazing playground for people who are challenged. It was one of the town council members wrote grants and supervised it, and it's just an amazing place to take anybody, even adults. The way it's set up, it's just phenomenal. I've never seen anything like it. And on the Democratic Committee in Pendleton, one of the women on the committee works at University of Buffalo, and it's the trade program. And what they do is meet with groups of people who are challenged to see what their needs are, assess them, and help them with maybe adaptive equipment or whatever tools they need to live, a viable life in the community independently. And that's a free service, and they lend equipment. So I would definitely set that up, somewhere in Pendleton. There's the fire hall, there's community churches, there's restaurants where they're very cooperative with the town to, set up, a back room or wherever, open room, to have a presentation and bring some equipment in and invite people to come and check it out. I know there's a Lions Club in Pendleton that also helps people with different needs when there are special situations, and there's a food pantry. Pendleton is a small town, so it's not like they have a big town budget like Amherst. So I guess it would be more what I would have to find out, what are the needs, and then pull together what agencies could help them or what people need help, and have a meeting of some sort and see where we could go with that.
Question. You've been running now for a couple months, you think?
Since July 26th.
July 26th. So have you been door to door, probably? What is the number one or couple of issues that's going on in Pendleton that you can help with that would also help people with disabilities?
Well, that's a big question. So far in my door-to-door, asking people their concerns, most of the people in Pendleton are happy, believe it or not. There weren't many complaints. The complaints that I heard were, biggest was like, say, in front of Star Point High, the school district, it's, a big, elementary, middle school, high school in a row. They want a traffic light of some sort because there's accidents there with people going in and out of the, school grounds. And the other is they want a light on Transit and Tonawanda Creek, because again, you have a lot of people rushing to work, whatever, people get killed there. As far as I've heard recreation, like, repave the tennis courts, put in pickleball courts.
I need to move.
It is. It is. I was surprised. People did not complain. One woman wanted, soccer fields and summer camps for kids on the town property because they have these big fields. I didn't hear a lot of complaints. I was shocked, believe me. I mean, I'm in an okay neighborhood, I'm nice,
I
but
feel that once you get on that seat, you're gonna hear a lot more things, so. this is
yes. Yes, and I'd be open to hosting, groups of people who have special needs and see how we could help them. Whether it's, again, inviting groups and agencies and seeing how we could work together. That's probably the best use, that I could think of how to help. And also I'd be open to what other ideas people might have, saying, could you sponsor this event from, the Democratic Committee or something like that. That's how I got that other email, was from someone on the committee who says, it's what I do for a living, could you set up a group? And I said, sure. So I've done that with the college, again, I was always assessing needs of the community, setting up programs to meet the needs. Write grants, could write grants. I've written that too. Any other questions?
Ms. Topper, you're probably familiar with the Americans with Disabilities Act that was passed 32 years ago. Do you know, does the town of Pendleton have an ADA coordinator to assure that facilities are fully accessible to people with disabilities?
Because I'm new to politics in the town, no, I do not know. But I do know that the town hall has a ramp. I do know that Wendellville Fire Company, which people go there to vote as well as have their committee meetings, is handicapped accessible. I know there's a couple churches that also are community minded and work with people in the town to host meetings. And I know the one on Campbell and Bear is ground floor, as far as like this weekend, they're having a rummage sale. So you just walk in the doors. It wouldn't be difficult to get in there. So I think generally, yes, there's a way to go to different town meeting or be on committees or participate.
Any other questions?
Follow up on that, then, if there's no other questions, that those are required things, and what Ernie was talking about is so an ADA coordinator, it's a position that's meant to ensure that the Americans with Disabilities Act is adhered to and met within your town. Like that, it's a position. It's not, are things accessible according to the standards? It's a person to make sure that they're accessible according to the standards.
But I don't know if they have that or not.
Right, yeah, but I'm just saying, like, making sure that your town is, hall is, and all those things are accessible are required. Because
I mean,
you have members of the disability community in your town.
right. I mean, it's something that I could find out and get back to you on, but I right now, this minute, I don't know.
Oh,
And I
yeah,
don't want to say
I
I
just
do.
wanted to point out that
It's important.
they're two separate things, like, is something accessible versus is there a person to coordinate to ensure it's accessible?
I'll find out, but I don't know right now. Anything else?
That's a long pause, right? Hey, we might be done now, if nobody.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
We
I'll find
appreciate
it.
it.
Thanks.
No.
Our next candidate is running just a couple minutes late, so it's an opportunity to take a quick break. Angelo Morinelli, candidate for 145th.
Mike Benson will introduce you.
Yeah.
And you are good.
Hi.
Thank you. Do you want me
Nice
to
to
put
see
the
you.
mask on?
No, you can take the mask off.
Okay, thank
What
you.
you're gonna do is stand here, speak to the camera. We've got people on Zoom and people here in the
Okay.
room. And
All
I'll
right.
introduce you.
Thank you.
Just want to introduce Angelo Morinelli, who's a candidate for the 145th,
Well, I'm the
The
assemblyman
incumbent.
now. I'm the,
Okay.
I am there.
for the 145th district. He's going to talk a little bit about his background, his experience, what's important to the district, and then we'll take questions.
Thank you. I'm Angelo Morinello. Many of you have met me. I've been here before. I'm just really sorry that the pandemic prevented me from coming back more often. Last time I was here, we did discuss some challenges, and I really believe we've addressed some of those challenges. My background is very simple. I was an attorney. I'm a practicing attorney, only I don't practice. Vietnam combat veteran. I was the city court judge for 14 years. When I aged out of that, I ran for the state assembly, and this will be, I'm looking for my 4th term. Basically, as I'm going to address what your needs are, okay? I feel that number one, what brought attention to the needs and the most impactful is the Olmsted decision of 1999 by the Supreme Court, where basically the Supreme Court said that to isolate and provide services to the handicapped is a form of discrimination, which actually put it on the map to start focusing on what is best for all of you. Community services, allowing you to be part of your decision-making process for your future is probably one of the most important assets that came out of that decision, because each and every one of you that does have a handicap does not necessarily mean you're not functional, does not necessarily mean that you can't be inclusive into the community. Yes, there are challenges, and that is what our job is as your legislator, as your representative. One of the difficulties coming out of the Olmsted decision is the obligation of the states to provide these services. But as in many instances, New York State, which has the budget, we have to constantly fight to provide services. Now, they always put the money back in the budget, but they seem to forget you are some of the more vulnerable citizens that we have, and that we have to protect you more. What I really think is we need to have the general public become more aware of who you are as a person. I've worked with the Developmental Disability Association, and what one of our programs is to now begin allowing those of you who have disabilities, any type of disability, to become more open and visible to the general community. When you're not visible to the community, it becomes very difficult for people to grab onto your needs and support. Now, in the last budget, there was increases. Unfortunately, about 42 billion of that budget was a one-time shot from the federal government. So the one thing I commit to you is I will be vigilant in any cuts that there may be. The other issue is many of your caretakers, those that assist, whether it's in the homes or whether it's here, there was something in the budget to increase wages, but it put many of them on the cliff. And what do I mean by the cliff? Services are provided and assistance is provided based on income standards. But the unfortunate part, the way the law is written, if you earn a certain amount of money, you lose certain benefits. Well, it doesn't pay to give someone additional funds and then have them have any assistance removed. There's no sliding scale. I'll give you an example. Let's say that government assistance equates to maybe $500 a week. Now, this is just an example for a caretaker. Well, now they're happy. They've gotten a little bit of they've gotten a job. They're earning 500, but they also still need a little bit of assistance on housing or food or other assistance. What happens? They lose everything. Well, it's a disincentive. So they really want to go ahead, but it actually puts them behind. So one of the things that I advocate for, and I'm going to ask all of you on behalf of your caretakers, is to try and get a dialogue going on if you're receiving services and you start improving yourself, you don't cut everything off. You maybe decrease them to give the incentive to live a better lifestyle. So we have that challenge with both the caretakers, and also that impacts the services that can be provided to you. There's things that in my years there I've been really aware of. Oh, I didn't see where the gentleman who escorted me in the room has followed what I've done, and he thanked me because I did advocate and fight and voted for an increase in funding. But sometimes there's unintended consequences, and that's what we all have to start becoming a little more aware of. As far as your daily needs, your service providers are phenomenal. They are dedicated. Many of them do not get the rewards they need, but I know each and every one of you agrees. The other nice thing is when I see those with disabilities interacting in the community, whether it's a grocery store, whether it's on the street, whether it's even in a coffee shop or a restaurant, it really makes me feel good because we're all one. And we just cannot segregate our communities. And so that's why I started out with the Olmsted decision, the Supreme Court, because I think that sets the standards and the tone. But I also believe we need that out into the public. We need more articles. And I think we need to basically show the skills that those that are handicapped still have and what their needs are. Thank you. And I'm open for questions, comments, or just sharing. Yes.
You had said in your presentation that you would like to get us more visibility. How would you do that?
Well, no, I'm saying I want that as an idea that maybe we can all work together. Okay, how do we do it? Maybe we do an article on, each of you can do an article and have it put in the papers, or do something on social media, or have, now, your website shows the activities that you have, but if you're not part of your website, you don't understand what is there. So it's something that I would be, when I say don't understand, okay, I hope I'm answering your question. I just think that there has to be maybe public relations is the better terminology. Because the general public, I don't think understands. I don't think they know what the Olmsted decision is. And maybe it started with an op-ed in the Gazette that's sent to the other papers as to what the Olmsted decision is. And that can then generate into more articles supporting the agencies, maybe highlight an agency or highlight one of the areas that you have. So what I'm saying is everything we've been doing has been the same. But I think we need to focus more on you as an individual and not just the terminology of independent living. And how do we do that? Like I said, maybe you have your supporters' social media accounts. Now, we will post that we were here today speaking to you, okay? But I think we need more of that. Do I have the solution? No. Do I have the idea? Yes. Did I answer your question? Thank you.
Any questions?
Come on, I wasn't that good, was I? But I do know some of you. Yes.
We've been talking about transportation, like, I'm gonna say from here a lot, for years, I promise, we got funds for it. At least about, how long you been?
I've been there 6 years.
At least 6 or 7 years, it wasn't you who made the problem.
Thank you.
Okay? It wasn't you who made the
I
problem.
appreciate that.
And I don't see no change.
Well,
And I know that you might not get into the weeds with that, but somebody at your stature can apply pressure on the people.
here's the challenge. It's the NFTA and the state does provide funds for the NFTA, but those funds do not have conditions with it. So possibly because of your statement, it gives me the idea that maybe we put in some focus for those funds, that we do provide transportation. Now, you mentioned here to Lockport for years, and I'm probably the oldest one in this room, okay? But 77,
You got me.
I got you. I know. But the point I'm making is my entire life I've complained about the route to Lockport. The county seat is in Lockport. Everything is done in Lockport. Now, at one point, they did have an office at the Supreme Court building here for at least filing papers. They've all gone to now electronic filings for court documents. But that is a major issue throughout. The county of Niagara does have that rural transportation, but it's not in Niagara Falls. It does help out in the rural areas that's funded by the county. But I don't disagree with you. But let me tell you, NFTA has cut Niagara Falls routes. Okay. And so now it's difficult to get anywhere. So now that you've mentioned that again, okay, I'm not going to promise, okay, because listen, we have one party rule. If they don't want to do it, it's going to be an impossible. Okay. But we have to keep the pressure on them. And how do we do that? We do a public relations campaign. And that's what I was trying to refer to you, is that maybe there should be a letter to the editor and to every newspaper with a number of your signatures on it, speaking about it, asking why the NFTA has cut the routes, why they don't provide transportation. And the one difficulty that probably impacts every one of you is, I don't know if any of you have driver's licenses or even automobiles, but I think that public transportation in our area is probably one of the least visible public transportation areas around. They keep complaining, the NFTA needs more money, but they need to restructure. So what I would ask is maybe you talk to whoever your caretaker is about how do we put something together that we can keep the general public aware, because the more people that we can get involved, the more chance we have of accomplishing that goal.
Mr. Marinello,
Yes,
On,
Oh, I'm
Perhaps-
sorry.
perhaps you were referring to this when you were talking about the transportation issues as part of that, but I guess you're familiar with paratransit, which is curb to curb wheelchair lift van service.
Yes, I am.
There has been a paratransit expansion bill in the legislature for something like 8 years, trying to get more funding so that instead of just being 3/4 of a mile from a fixed route bus system, it's 3 miles from a fixed route system that people that have need of that service would be able to travel to more places. And presumably that would come with some additional funding for the NFTA from the state. Are you familiar with the situation with that at the moment?
Yes, I am. I believe that is Senator Kennedy's bill in the Senate. I don't know the bill number in the Assembly, but if somebody has the bill number, I would be happy to look it up and then next year try and work on it. But I am familiar with, first of all, the challenge that those of you who have the disability to get from point A to point B many times. And it's not so much the main route I think you're talking about, but I believe what you're focusing on is the ability to get to the main route or get from the main route to some of your care providers or your appointments. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
Well, so you,
Go ahead, Eric. Any other questions?
well,
Oh, there's a question here in the room, right?
You want to let her
Okay.
go?
Yeah, let her.
Okay. Hi, my name is Jeanette, and I'm wondering, what is your plan to help people who rent apartments? Low income, some more affordable housing. There's just not enough funds to pay. They don't have enough income to pay the rent. Apartments are costing $1,000 and up, even in the bad areas.
Well, I am supporting the new project that is being talked about for the Presti Apartments area, which is similar to the Bethel Commons project. The unfortunate part is that expenses are going up, taxes go up. So what we need to do is assist private landlords to be able to provide apartments. I agree, we don't have enough, but what I'm running into when I support projects like that is the NIMBYs, not in my backyard. And that is the most frustrating thing because, again, you don't exist to most people. And what I mean by that is they're blind to you or your needs. So they don't prioritize who has the greatest needs. They just use sliding scales, but they don't look at communities. So again, I think that as a group with disabilities, irrespective of what that disability may be, you have to start getting people to understand you're humans and you're the same as everyone else. Okay. So my plan is to support whatever housing can be. My plan is to try and get communities to understand. I also have a bill. This is very interesting because one of the difficulties in Niagara Falls has been absentee landlords who have absolutely atrocious apartments. They don't even know about them. And if there is a citation of a violation, there's no teeth in it. I have a bill that I want to get forward and our new mayor will support it. My former mayor would not support it. And what it does is, if there's a code violation that they don't pay, it's added to their tax bill. So that now, eventually, if that gets big enough, that can be taken away from them. And hopefully we can then start focusing on building better stock. I do work with Habitat for Humanity. Now, that is usually single family homes. And this thought just came to me because of your question. I don't want to tell you I walked in here with this idea because I always am open-minded. But maybe Habitat for Humanity might start looking at apartment buildings to be able to rehab. Okay, and I've got a meeting coming up in I think about 3 weeks with them, and I'm going to present that idea to them. And it came out of your question. I don't want you to think I thought of it before. I didn't, but I come with an open mind.
Thank you.
I get one last one. That was-
Sure,
Okay.
whatever you want. I'm here.
From what? But from what I see, I'm just speaking for Niagara Falls, it might be county nationwide, which I'm quite sure it is. Two things I see that's affecting the cities and the country as a whole is drug addiction and mental health issue. Right? How do you feel about, or what actions are you taking or you work to try to combat those two?
Well, number one, what I'm trying to do is get people to understand that we are confusing our young children with all of the things we're putting on them. Kindergartners, first, second grade. What pronoun do you want? These poor kids just want to play, okay? So we're creating a situation that we're causing this. We have to get away from it. Now, yesterday, I was privileged to be part of this new room they're putting in at the police station. And it's for if a parent is taken, if they've committed a crime, they're going to get arrested. Instead of having that child just sit somewhere in the building, there's a room now that's dedicated to the children. And we cut that yesterday. What's the importance of that? The trauma of sitting in a courtroom or sitting in a hall waiting for child protective services to come is traumatic. So we have to start addressing underlying causes. Everyone talks about mental health issues. Everyone talks about our youth. But is anybody really addressing the underlying causes? Now, sometimes I feel like a voice in the wilderness because I do talk about this. I talk about the fact that we can't just say things for headlines and for election purposes, which happens in every election cycle, whether it's a 2-year cycle or a 4-year cycle. If you do the studies, everything, I'm going to lower taxes, I'm going to do this. None of it ever happens because the system is too big. So what do? We have to start paring it down and looking at the drug addiction. I'm conflicted because in New York City, there's 2 experimental areas that they're allowing injection sites. Okay. They're claiming it saves lives. The jugs are chested before they let them inject them. And then they're sitting there with Narcan in case there's an overdose. I'm conflicted whether that is the way to address the drug problem or not. So I'm becoming more aware of what they're trying to do, but I'm not sure if that's the issue. But number one, I think we have to stop confusing our youth, which is where part of it is. Number two, we have to get back to making people responsible for the consequences of their actions. Our youth now, there's no consequences. If you're under 18, it doesn't matter what you do. If you're caught with a loaded gun, they can't do a thing to you. If you're caught with a loaded gun, as soon as you turn 18, your record is wiped out. Okay. So now what happened in Albany this year on the last night, well, it happened twice, once on the last night and one with another issue. But on the last night at 2 o'clock in the morning, they put a bill before us and they didn't have any information or names on it. Okay. So it was to exonerate if you did not file your paperwork, which is required as an official, if you get an official position. So 6 months go by, there was an election, there was a change with that supervisor. The position was open because the paperwork wasn't filed. We have to file what's called an oath of office. And if we don't file it in a certain time period, that position is gone. The new supervisor appointed someone else. So the person who never filed the paperwork sued. What do you think they did in Albany that night? They put a bill in to exonerate that person and say, well, we're going to change the rule for you. Okay. I have no problem changing a rule after the fact if you discuss it and find out. But to exonerate someone who doesn't follow the rules is sending the message, we have no responsibility for consequences of our actions. We have no responsibility to the community. So what we can do is we can start talking about it, not be afraid to talk about it. Talk about there has to be certain consequences. Listen, everyone with a disability has some consequences in their ability to have a normal life. And they're challenged, okay? Now, it wasn't really codified until the Olmsted decision, okay? So now people are forced, the states are forced to have the agencies, okay? So it's a longer answer, but I think what we need to do is get back to consequences of your actions. You do something wrong, there's a penalty. No, I'm not saying it has to be draconian, but we can't just keep saying it's okay. You can keep doing it, because I think that confuses. Drug addiction, it confuses them. Instead of trying to get them off and wean them off and put the money into services, well, we're going to open up sites and you can just come in and shoot up. What is it? They're not working. They're not community responsible. So what does that do to help us alleviate that problem? So, I'm sorry.
You speak about New York City, right? I know.
But they're trying, no, there's a bill to move it.
No, I understand. I know about Niagara
Okay.
Falls. It's a whole lot of programs dealing with, you know what I'm saying, people with drug addictions, and we offer one of them here. You know what I'm saying?
Right, I know that, peer to peer. You have the peer to peer here.
But when you talk about responsibilities and be accountable for it, right? It's got to be the government too, right? Because we talk about people held responsible for things, right? But we're not figuring out why the people are doing those things in the to begin with.
I
I
said,
don't believe nobody wakes up every day talking about, I'm gonna go ahead and be a crackhead, drug dealer or something like that. What makes a person, you know what I'm saying, come to the conclusion that that's what they got to do to survive? Now, I don't think major cities, I don't care if it's a Democrat city or a Republican city or any kind of city, I don't think, you know what I mean, we're putting the time and effort to figure out the root cause of all this stuff that's going on.
if you recall, what did I start with? We're not looking at the underlying cause of what's causing it.
I understand.
We're looking at sound good, do nothing fixes
Right.
because they get headlines, okay? And so if you recall, I did start out with what's the root cause, okay? And I really believe that part of the root cause is no responsibility for your consequences of your actions. We just, oh, you're okay. I'm sorry, sir, what's your, I'm sorry,
My name is Darren. I'm
Darren,
Yeah, I'm
okay.
listening. I'm sorry.
Are we okay? Did
You're
I,
always okay.
no, did I answer your question?
Oh,
Yeah, I started out with that, if you remember, Derek.
You did, but, you know.
No, I get it.
Circled into something else. I just
Yeah,
wanna read
now,
back to the root cause.
I'm one person,
Oh, I understand.
but I need to build an army to get that message out there. So that's why I discuss it.
I was gonna piggyback on him, poverty is the cause. And do you have any, is there any way you can help us with our poverty issues?
Well,
in our city?
when you say poverty issues, okay, one of the things that I said earlier was, okay, there is employment opportunities, but if you're on the poverty scale and you decide you want to get one of these jobs, you lose housing, you lose medical. We have to change how we address the government and the assistance we give individuals. It's unfair. And like I started, and I'll repeat it, if it costs $500 a week, $2,000 a month for somebody, okay, with the housing, the food, the medical, okay, we're helping them. They go get a job and earn $500 a week. What happens? They lose everything, and then they have to pay taxes on the $500. So instead of living on costing $2,000 a month, they're living on maybe $1,600. So they've gone behind. We have to adjust the system. How do we focus? Okay. How do we give people a hand up rather than a handout? And I do speak about this. I talk about it on the floor. The difficulty we have is we have a majority out of New York City that you mentioned that seem to want to control the dialogue, and they never want to solve an issue. They want to create an issue and then come up with a solution that's not necessary. So if you were getting full assistance and it was the equivalent of 500 and you went to get a job and you earned 500, instead of making you go backwards, why don't we continue the housing or some of the benefits so that you're rewarded? And then as you move up, you can then move yourself out of that situation. But why should you go behind to go get a job that's not going to benefit you in the future because the system cut you off?
Okay, we've got a question from the Zoom room. Aaron, go ahead.
Hi there, I'm Erin Zich. I'm recovery coordinator for the A to A program here at ILNC. My question to you is, when you commented on the safe injection sites, and yes, they're trying to expand here into Niagara and to this area. What is your opinion on with the state opioid funds that are coming through from the opioid lawsuit? What would be your opinion on where you think those funds should be utilized?
Well, first of all, on the injection site issue, I did say that I'm conflicted because I've got to study it a little more to make a determination as to whether that is going to be of assistance or not. The opiate addiction funds, my feeling is this, okay? And I'm going to give you a little bit of an example. I'm a Vietnam combat veteran. Vietnam veterans suffered the most because they were brought back to an ungrateful nation because they didn't agree with the war and they couldn't recognize the benefit. There were vast suicides and veterans wouldn't talk to each other. So we started the peer-to-peer program where a veteran could talk to a veteran, somebody who understood. You have a peer-to-peer program in independent living. I think one of the focuses should be to expand the peer-to-peer programs, to expand the services to help move them out, give them individuals to talk to. I know we have NA, we have AA, we have peer programs, but I really think not only do we need to focus on them, but some of those funds should be directed for physical locations in a more convenient area for those who have the need, and for more assistance with either agencies and individuals in their daily functions and in their salaries. I don't think they should be going to proliferate additional usage because we're going to give you a Narcan if you overdose. So, and I hope that answered your question.
No, that's it. That's trying to shine a light for sure. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Any other questions here at ILNC or in the Zoom room? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate the opportunity, and I would hope that now that the pandemic's over, that we can come back and talk more. But I'm going to give you all a challenge, okay? Think about what I said about coming together, letting people know what the Olmsted decision is, letting them know what your challenges are, but more importantly, show them that you are human beings, okay? With just a little bit of a challenge in the morning sometimes to move around, okay? We're getting there. You know, one last thing. So when Governor Cuomo first started his weekly television appearances, and sometimes daily, I got an email and a phone call from the same person. There was no sign interpreter in his programs, okay? I want to say I got that done, okay? Now, I may not be the only one, but immediately I sent a letter and I contacted all of them. Many times as an elected official, we just don't know 100% of what's happening. So we need interaction and we need dialogue and we need assistance. And by the way, thank you for Stand with the Senecas. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
It is my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh.
So that was the last of our scheduled candidates for today. We do have on tape two people who presented last week, Congressman Brian Higgins and Assembly candidate Bill Conrad. So we're going to play those, so you'll be able to watch them here on the screen.
Oh.
I've got my video on, so I'm not sure. Did you see me? I see you and I hear you. Fantastic. What can you do to increase the access to public transportation for disabled people and other populations? Well, urban as well as rural. I'm sorry, the last part? Urban as well as rural. Yeah. The infrastructure law, infrastructure law is the largest investment in infrastructure in the history of the country, exceeding that of the New Deal, which was done in 3 iterations. And it was about $41 billion in 1930s dollars. It was about $687 billion in today's dollars. This is $1 trillion. A lot of that money is going to transit, and a lot of that is going to expand the reach of public transportation, not only in urban areas that are underserved, but also suburban and rural areas as well. Whereas, access to healthcare is a dire need. And the rules. The issue is the law of economics. You don't have a lot of people in rural areas, and therefore there's not a lot of providers there. So transportation access to providers is critically important. So I'm working with Niagara Frontier Transportation Authority. We get along sometimes we don't. But there's a lot of money, and I voted for that money. And I expect this community, not only this community is fair share, but to make sure that it provides access to people who, for whom access is particularly problematic. And that's both in the urban area and the outlying areas as well. Is there anything we ordinary citizens can do to assist you in making sure that Niagara County gets its share? Yeah, I think you can. I think that it could be very, very helpful. Look, independent living, and it's a consortium of not-for-profits and volunteers, have street credibility in terms of providing and looking after being advocates for people that want to live independently, but for whatever reason, including transportation, that becomes a challenge. So anything on letterhead of a or several not-for-profits directly to my office and to the Niagara Frontier Transportation Authority is very, very important. Whenever the NFTA, Niagara Frontier Transportation Authority, has a public hearing about any proposed service cuts or new extensions or improvements to light rapid rail transit system or paratransit, showing up is very, very important, and advocating for the very issue that you asked me about. What I can do, what I have done, what I'll continue to do, is make sure that those categorical funding grants that improves access to people who are in both urban, suburban, and rural communities, to make sure that those areas of funding are properly funded and accessible to the local agency, in this case, the NFTA, that is responsible for public transportation. We don't do a good job in public transportation. The access is less than desirable. The quality of the experience is not good. And Buffalo has got to change and make it not only, accessible, but make that experience a good one. So that those who are dependent on public transportation aren't frustrated by the very agency that is responsible for providing that.
Let's make it more attractive than sitting in traffic.
Absolutely.
Thank you. That's excellent answer.
Well said.
Does anybody else want to jump in? I'll change gears here a little bit then. What can your office do policy-wise to assist in the transition of various populations, say from nursing homes or from correctional facilities, back into, particularly people with disabilities, back into their own community?
Yeah, look, financially, morally, it should be everybody's objective to allow those that want to live independently to live independently. So that's an issue of funding through the Medicaid program, through a lot of particular developmentally disabled community. 70% of funding is provided through the Medicaid program, 60% of which is federal money. So getting federal money in the Medicaid program is obviously helpful in helping people, if they're not living independently, to transition back to independent living. The other issue, and you know this better than I do, is the difficulty of finding people to work in that area. It's not easy to work. You not only have to be, a person that's, built to help other people, but you've got to be patient and you've got to be willing to be a friend as much as anything else, because the physical services you provide somebody who's trying to live independently that may otherwise end up in a nursing home, it requires, a skill. And typically these workers are low-paid workers. We have to recognize that if there is dignity in work, that has to include everybody, especially those that care for the most vulnerable amongst us. Particularly with the developmentally disabled community. Back in the 70s, there was a big transition. And the idea was to deinstitutionalize people so that they could live in neighborhoods, community residences, they called them. And I know from personal experience, that was very controversial at the time. There was a People Incorporated, for example, a community residence that was designated for a particular area. You'd have to go to city council for a variance or a zoning change. And all of the protesters would rise up and talk about property values, public safety issues. As you know, those are caricatures that are not supported by fact. But people have tendency to oppose things that they don't understand. Our responsibility is to make people better understand that people that end up in community residences, regardless of their background, are net contributors to the community. And that's what this is all about. So I think we have to deal with funding issues. It's the reality of this situation.
Congressman, we would like to thank you so much for participating at our with the candidates day. And we will now go to our next candidate, Mr. William Conrad III, who is the Assembly member of the 140th District.
Thank you.
First of all, it's Bill Conrad. Last time I was called out, I was in trouble in the principal's office, so I just want to throw that out there. Bill Conrad represents parts of Black Riverside, the town of Wanda's, from town of City, town of Wanda's, Village of Kenmore. District's changing a little bit this upcoming redistricting, as we would call it. And just a little bit about myself. I'm a father of 4 kids. I'm a former educator. I taught social studies. My wife's a special ed teacher for 22 years. And had the pleasure of serving the people of 140th for 2 years now, almost 2 years. And I won't speak about myself, but certainly would welcome any questions and kind of inquire about myself or my stance on politics related to you. So I'll go. Sure. Well, I think I was just, literally before I came here, I was at a symposium at UUP that put on upstate, it's a mental health crisis nationwide. And what we started to see, and I know Byron Brown spoke about it, but also so did the town of Tonawanda, we're starting to, we got that 998 number now, right? We're trying to get people to call if they're in crisis, or mental health crisis, or what have you, to be able to have those social workers, those folks on staff. I think behavioral health is with the town of Tonawanda police. We're trying to get that, move in that direction to kind of be able to de-escalate and teach those police also the skills to be able to deal with that. If that's where you're going in the direction, we're starting to see a move in that direction. 998 has gotten more numbers, calls for suicide prevention, but it's also meant to be not 991 or 911, but an answer to that in our public. So we're starting to see a shift in our resources, but also the mentality of how do we de-escalate situations and how can we treat them without them turning into tragedy. Kind of before they can. I know the town of Tonawanda, the city of Buffalo are doing that, and I'm working in my capacity to make sure that the police have those funds to be able to do that, as well as keep maintaining what they're doing as well. So, yes. Yeah.
This is my first bill that I
Okay.
have a bill at the NYS Assembly and in the Senate. It's out in the finance in the Senate.
Sure.
And the Assembly is stuck in transportation.
Okay.
I want to know if you will co-sponsor my bill and help me with my bill to get out of the transportation city assembly. I really need help getting my friends and the veterans and the seniors better fair transit. Because people are being stranded with fair transit. If my bill passes, it will make it go 3 miles from a bus stop. Because right now, fair transit only goes 3/4 of a mile from a bus stop. And a young lady, she got, the bus company didn't know until the lady gets her police called up. A young lady who works at Amazon, she had a catch the 9 o'clock bus. She doesn't start work until 3:50 in the afternoon. She got, her wheelchair got stuck in the middle of Walden. They had called a bus company and the police asked them what they're gonna do about this young lady being stuck. I need some help getting this bill passed because it's very important for the veterans, for the seniors, and for myself.
Okay. Well, like everything, I'd love to see the bill itself. I want to take a look at it. I supported in the past the study recently to take a look at fair transit. I've talked to veterans in my own district who are the folks who need to get to their services and can't get there, or it's so expensive for them to be able to get there that it's a hindrance, it's a barrier for them to getting treatment. We keep talking about that over and over again. We got to eliminate these barriers to be able to get folks to the places where they need to be. So I'd love to sit down with you. I'd love to look at the bill, and then I'm not on the transportation committee, so I can't bring it out of there, but I certainly can lend aid to that.
And we also pay $70 for.
I'm very well aware, yes. I agree.
You might tell them more commonplace today with their bill.
My bill, it's right now, it's called the fair transit bill, but if it passes, it's gonna be named after me.
Okay.
Stephanie's
Stephanie's law?
law.
I like it. I like it. You're in my wheelhouse. Let me put it that way. So I think you're getting a sense for me where in directions. We're trying to remove barriers for people getting the help they need. That seems to be a theme, and at least in the Midwestern New York majority, whether it's the state or as well. Other questions? Yeah. Well, one of the things that we have been working on is actually clearing the bus station and rest stops. That's been a bane of my existence in office, is making sure that we can get accessibility to the actual bus stops themselves. And I've had set up several meetings with them to make sure that we're able to get there. Because I don't know about you, but during the snowfall, it's an absolute disaster. And one of the things that we kept noticing on going past Fertile or getting into Riverside or Black Rock in that community, either Kenmore as well, right on Sheridan Drive, is that the businesses are left. Who's responsible? We're trying to hammer that out. And if it has to be done legislatively, but that's one of the things that we're working on right now. It's just trying to get that. So dignity of folks that are using these transit systems is such an important piece of everything. Absolutely. Oh, my staff themselves took shovels and started shoveling some of them and clean up garbage right on Sheridan Drive. I gotta get the culture made on my staff, a lot of praise. And she's, you know, she loves Jesus and she's working for the chapel now. But she was on my staff and she went out there and picked up the trash. My staff has gone out there with shovels because we wanted to make a point. If not who, then, you know, if not us, then. So we got to make those actions, and if we got to send a message there, and I have spoken to Dan on this, and I'm not letting them off the hook. I said, okay, when we have this meeting, we'll talk in the summer. Let me off. Then winter comes, it's going to snow soon, right? Winter's coming, and then we're going to have the same problems that come. Well, swore I shouldn't have. So, any other questions? Yes.
Given your history as an educator, I'm sure you can appreciate how necessary technology is for function independence and quality of life in every area of life.
Sure.
Includes education, for communication, socialization, citizenship, understanding now, you would speak, that's how we do that.
Sure.
But with disabilities encounter, numerous technology access barriers, access, lack of awareness, and education about assistive technology, access technology, lack of broadband access. So I'm wondering how it would be done in terms of infrastructure, policy, and budget to support development of technology-related services in order to improve access to technology.
You bring up a lot of things. I think broadband is a broad topic that we can talk about. Rural areas, there's dead zones in the city, the availability of competition. You know, we can get into that on its own for a conversation. But you know, when I was a town councilman, we had I was very lucky to have a couple of citizens that were blind, and they would attend our town board meetings, and they would update us to the point where we started talking about the website, how it's just not accessible, and they would bring it to our attention. And we were able to put together a disability committee and start to really look at things from there. I think this is a question not only for the science and technology, but also the disability committees. Where is this going to be in the budget? I sat in on school district meetings where we're talking about making sure an IEP or a 504 is accommodated, and what technology, translator, what have you, is needed. But you know, what about the accessibility to the general public? We look at the library now for hotspots and so many other things. Maybe there's a realm where they can kind of come in. They've been doing a lot more health streams as well, and getting people access to technology, not just handicapped, but actually the general public, especially when they don't have access to those things. And how many applications do we fill out today? How many things that we do have to be online? And if you don't have online, how devastating that could be. So I think moving in that direction, I think looking at that as a budgetary item in this upcoming fiscal year, and also making a commitment on that. You know, let's be honest. We've been talking about broadband for 10 years. Let's start to put the ground what we need to do and go forward. I mean, we have a worker shortage. We all know that. We're seeing it in many capacities, from nursing on to aides, all the way through. We're looking at workforce development. We got a lot of problems out there, and we're gonna have to, you know, we're a mile wide in our issues. So we're gonna try to have to hone in on a couple and solve them in the meantime. Thank you. Yes. Oh, I'm done. Yes. Well, thank you.
We have Everett Grafton, who is a candidate for the 61st Senatorial District.
This concludes our Meet the Candidates Day for Niagara County. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Please remember to vote on November 8th. If you have questions about your polling place or accessibility, give us a call. Thank you and have a great day.